My name is Dick Brogden, and I'm a missionary with the Assemblies of God World Missions, and we're just delighted to partner with CMN. The Assemblies of God was founded to better send missionaries around the world. It was central to our DNA. It behooves us then to ask the question, what is missions? Because with the passage of time, there's been some confusion that has come in. Stephen Neal, the great British historian, he said, if everything is missions, nothing is missions. So what do we mean when we talk about missions? We really have to go back to the Bible and make decisions that are theological, not emotional, not relational. We have to be able to look at the scriptures and understand what they meant. We see in the book of Acts that the church did not naturally multiply across ethnic borders. In fact, when we get to Acts 13, the church in Antioch, which was kind of the first multinational church, they had to intentionally decide that they were going to send some of their best to places where there were no churches, and to cross cultural and geographical boundaries where there were no disciples, and to plant churches there. In fact, the word apostle, apostolos in Greek, means the sent ones. And what that church in Antioch did is they mimicked the heart of the Father by sending their best. So the first thing I'd like to say about missions, it's not taking the worst guys in our church, the ones who can't be lead pastors, the ones who can't fulfill a role for us, and say, let's send him to Pakistan. Well, if he's not going to bless your church, he's probably not going to bless Pakistan. So when we talk about missions, number one, we're talking about who's our Paul, who's our Barnabas, who's the most elite, the best educated, the sharpest relationally, the most full of the Holy Spirit, and let's send them. And let's not send them across town. Let's not just send them across the state. Let's not send them just across another part of our nation. Let's send them where there is no church, where there is no Christian, where there is no gospel witness. Because the Bible over and again talks about the nations, and that Greek word is ethne. It directly means peoples. It's where we get our word ethnicity. And the Bible is singularly focused on sending the gospel where the gospel has not gone, and that our best ambassadors are the ones who are prayed for and supported by the church to go there. There's other confusions about missions. For example, some people have confused the means with the ends. You see, an orphanage, that is a means. Rescuing trafficked women, that's a means. Literacy programs, that's a means. A business, an English center, a CrossFit gym, that's not the goal. We should do those things well, and we should do them for the glory of God, but they're not the goal of missions. Whatever we do, and God can use all of our talents and all of our gifts in these cross-cultural, unreached locations, but the goal is that disciples would be made and churches would be planted where they don't exist. David Bosch was the great South African theologian, and he looked at the end of Acts 14, where Luke, through Paul, is toggling back and forth between disciples and churches in the same little few verses. And he says there is no discrepancy between making disciples and planting churches. When we are commissioned to make disciples of all the ethne, when we are commissioned to make disciples of all the peoples of earth, what that actually means is we have to plant churches. Because disciples can't be made in isolation, and we can't microwave them. They have to be made into communities. And so when we are talking about missions, very bluntly, missions is this: making disciples and planting churches where disciples don't exist and the church isn't found, primarily amongst unreached people groups, for the glory of God. And everything else can be means to serve that. By all means, let's have gyms and English centers and help those who are poor and reach out in the love and compassion of Jesus. But let's not call that missions. Missions is making disciples and planting churches amongst unreached peoples and places where the gospel hasn't gone. So let's kind of get away from a bit of the silliness of saying that everybody is a missionary. When we look at the fivefold gifts in the books of Ephesians, we have some he gave to be apostles, some to be pastors, some to be teachers, some to be prophets, and some to be evangelists. We don't ever say to our churches, all of you are the pastor, all of you are the teacher, all of you are the prophets, all of you are the evangelists. So why do we on that fifth one say, well, all of you are missionaries? I get what we're trying to do. We're trying to ask our people to be on point, to be missional, to be making disciples themselves. And that's awesome. Let's continue that. But if we don't understand that biblically, missions and missionaries are those who leave the church, those who leave their cultural boundaries, those who cross all the difficult barriers of context and understanding to make disciples and plant churches where they don't exist, then we're going to get away from the heart of what the Bible's calling us to. So the first thing I'd like to say in this opening segment is, let's keep a biblical understanding of what missions and missionaries are. That's not to the detriment of any of the other gifts. We're all in this together. But if we don't have a single-eyed vision, a united purpose on together finding our best representatives and sending them where we're not, we'll get away from God's heart for the lost and those who have never heard. We're a missionary church. That means we make disciples and we plant churches where no disciples exist and no churches have been found for the glory of God.